and welcome to this week's Amazing If podcast. We're Sarah and Helen, the founders of Amazing If, a business that's all about helping people have happy careers.
This week we're going to be continuing our 10-part series on confidence gremlins, where we're going to be talking about those top confidence gremlins that get in our way at work.
And this week we're focusing on people not liking you, which perhaps sounds a bit school-like, oh, they don't like me, but actually is a really common confidence gremlin. So people just worried about maybe pleasing people all the time, or just spend a lot of time worrying about what other people think about you. So just before we kick off, a quick reminder about what a confidence gremlin is and really why they matter. So confidence gremlins are the things that hold us back. And by holding us back, what we mean is they hold us back from doing a brilliant job in what we're already doing. But often they also hold us back from taking opportunities that we're actually really interested in and ultimately kind of doing the things that will make us really happy, because often you end up shying away from great opportunities or roles that you're really interested in because you've got these confidence gremlins that are getting in your way. Really important, and we say it every week, but I think we keep saying it so that hopefully people will believe us that everybody has confidence gremlins, and people will probably only believe us when we just do keep saying it, and hopefully if we keep talking about our own ones at some point, people will get the point that at least we have them if no one else does. The real trick here is not worrying about the fact that you've got them, because we all have them, is really just knowing what yours are, and once you know what they are, you actually then stand a chance of doing something about them. Small things, step by step, so that you just get to the point where they don't hold you back from all those things you'd love to do. So this week, as we said, we're talking about this kind of fear that people won't like you. So Helen, is this something that you hear a lot from maybe the teams that you've worked with, some of the people that you mentor?
Yes, and it's actually something that I think I've had through my career. I don't think it's actually gone away. I think it was definitely more when I first started out in my career. I think as a graduate, I was on the Boots graduate scheme.
With me?
Yeah, with you, indeed. A long time ago. And
Friends forever.
I think when you're in that situation, it's almost like the easiest thing to do is to build relationships and for people to like you and to go into those situations and kind of be nice and be friendly. And it definitely works, but I wonder, sometimes I think it only works to a point. So you almost start your career off knowing that being nice to people and building relationships has helped you get kind of further and get some good work and get some positive feedback, and people don't see you as difficult. But I think after a while it can almost become a trap, because you can think the reason I'm successful is because people like me. Yeah. Because that's kind of how a lot of people start out. You don't start out when you're kind of 21 in your first job. Really, I don't know that many people who start out irritating people and being really, really difficult. Most people start out quite amiable, quite open-minded, building relationships, being really friendly. And I think over a while you can then think, 5-6 years into your career, that the reason that I'm good at what I'm doing is because people like me. And I think at that point it can almost start to get in your way, because you might be in a situation where you think, I need to have a difficult conversation with somebody, and you don't do it because you think, well, if I do that, if I say that, if I put forward that objection, they might not like me.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how would that make you feel. So if I said to you, this person at work doesn't like you, even now just sort of saying that out loud, what sort of reaction do you have to that?
I think I'd think about it too much. Like I'd really dwell on it, and I'd think, what have I done? What have I said? And I'd put a lot of onus on me. Yeah. And I've got better about it. So now I would kind of think, actually, where is that person coming from? And I'd think more about them. But I think my initial reaction, even now, would be to think, what have I done? There was a phrase I used to really like, as a quote I used to have in my house. I think I'm slightly changing from it now, but it was work hard and be nice to people. And I used to
so cheesy. I know, it's so cheesy to have in your house.
I know, it's in my garage now. Right. Nobody says I've moved on.
You've moved it out of the house.
Moved it out. It's not been on the wall for a while. However, I used to really like that, and I used to think, that's, work hard and be nice to people. And I think that's exactly what I mean. I think it serves you to a point. And then I think, particularly when you start being a manager, I think it can, this being nice to people to the detriment of maybe sometimes being honest and having a more challenging conversation, can get in your way as in your career. And so now I think it's probably more about work hard and be fair to people. I think it's probably a better way. But that has taken me a long journey to go on. And I think, particularly being a manager, I think that can really put it in the spotlight of where you need to have a difficult conversation with somebody in your team about their performance.
Yeah.
But actually you want them to like you. You want your team to feel really positive and happy all the time. I've definitely been in that situation, and it can feel really hard to then have that difficult conversation where they probably won't like you. But ultimately, I don't know, you're not at work always to have lots of friends. And I think that can be a really difficult realisation.
I actually go back and forth in my mind about some of my best friends are from work. We met at work. And is that okay? Is that appropriate? Because I remember there being a bit of a trend where it's like you should be friends with people you work with.
Yeah.
And then actually more recently, I feel like actually people are now in modern workplaces, that's okay. And you can be, you can start businesses with your friends, you can work with your friends. And certainly I've been in teams where the teams have been very close, very cohesive. Everyone gets on actually brilliantly. But then there's a really interesting challenge about kind of, does that always work? Does that ever create problems for you? And I think that's where you have to sort of ask yourself some tough questions in terms of, if I had to make a tough decision or have a tough conversation because of the role that I'm in, could I still do it? And could I do it in a way where I felt okay about that? So how did you sort of said it's taken you quite a long time to come up to kind of get over the whole, I feel like everyone needs to love me and think that I'm absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
How did you start to overcome that?
I think I started to overcome it when I realised that it was holding other people back. So less about me and more, particularly when I became a manager. So I realised actually me wanting people to like me all the time meant that I wasn't giving them good feedback.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't giving them good feedback, I was getting in their way. And then I started to think about work. And if I'm in a meeting and I'm sat there and I can hear a conversation going on around me that I think, I just don't agree with. A couple of years ago, I might have thought, but I'm not going to say that because I want my peers to like me. And now I think more about the value that I add to a business, and the value I add to a business is to challenge things. And I think when I started thinking more about other people and the value to the business and less just about me and people liking me, I started to realise that I wasn't as effective. I wasn't helping people. I wasn't helping the business as much. And that just gave me a different frame and made me fixate less on myself and more on how I could make other people, the business or people that work for me, effective. And that really helped me to think, well, I need to do something different because I'm holding them back.
Yeah. I think often as well, when I've sort of thought about this for myself, is you sometimes associate people liking you with always agreeing and saying yes and being always that kind of go-to person, and that actually you can disagree with somebody, you can challenge, you can have quite tough conversations, and people can still like you.
Yeah.
It's kind of how you're defining liking. It's this idea that you always have to be sort of super nice and say yes to everything then means that you're liked. Actually, if you can frame that in a different way and actually be, that people often say, oh, what would you rather be, liked or respected?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, that is such a fake trade-off.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that as a kind of trade-off. I think you can be both liked and respected as long as you're not associating liked with saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
And everyone needing to love you all of the time, and spending your whole time worrying about what people are saying about you when you're not there and those kind of things.
And I think that's a downside of the people that really have this confidence gremlin that they need to be liked, often find themselves saying yes to everything and actually just carrying quite a lot of internal stress. They don't want to say no, so they take on lots of things, and they're the person that is then feeling really stressed, working late and just not happy at work because they can't get over this need to kind of be liked by everybody. And actually, I think if you look around, often it's not the people who are always saying yes and being super, super nice who you think are the most effective.
Yeah.
I think it's the people that are fair and they are friendly, but they can challenge, they can be objective, and they can be kind of firm and fair. It's those people that I look at in business and I think, wow, you do a great job. It's not the people that I think are just nice all the time. And I think if you can take a step back and look around you a little bit more and you get that realisation, you can see maybe how this confidence gremlin might be holding you back.
So you've sort of talked about, the first thing you said was, think about how you frame kind of being liked and consider the value that you add to a business.
Yeah.
And is that value really being nice the whole time?
Yeah.
The second thing you talked about is probably don't say yes to everything and that it's okay to say no it's okay to challenge, which they're really related, those first 2 points.
Yeah.
Anything else practically that you can do to sort of get out of this mentality of, oh, I'm the nice one?
Yeah, I'm the nice one. I think sometimes there are certain situations that you know are going to be more challenging. It could be because of people, or could be because of a meeting where you know there's going to be some, almost like a bit of a disagreement in there. And I think in those situations, either with these difficult people, these challenging people, or this challenging situation, your default might be to go to, okay, yeah, of course I'll do that. I'll take on that approach, when actually your reaction should be more, well, do we think that's the right thing to do? And I think a lot of the time you can prepare better for those situations. And at the start of the meeting, you can almost acknowledge, look, I think we're coming at this from different perspectives. So let's both think about, almost get some common ground between you to set it out from the outset and say, we might not agree on everything here, but can we both have just a general conversation about where we're both coming from, and hopefully get to some kind of agreement at the end of it. Almost just set the agenda.
Be shared.
Yeah, and so that I think then you can have that conversation without feeling like you're being really, really difficult, because you set the tone for the meeting.
Yeah. And actually some really helpful advice someone once gave me about relationships, because I really value very kind of strong, trusted, quite deep. I have lots of deep relationships.
Yeah.
And I really like to actually know people that little bit more than sort of just at a surface level at work. So I genuinely have people I do get on with brilliantly at work and know lots about them and lots about all of their life, not just what they do at work. And then often was a bit disconcerted if I couldn't have that with everybody.
Yeah.
So, a bit about being liked and just almost wanting to feel that I sort of knew people properly. And someone said, actually, it's just really unrealistic to sort of have everybody to like you to know everyone inside out. Actually, you do genuinely need to almost pick and choose your relationships. So you definitely need work best friends. You need those couple of people who you trust, you often do know outside work, who are always going to give you really good feedback, but also, potentially are your friends, etc. But actually, it's absolutely fine to have slightly more transactional relationships with some people who might not like you. To be honest, they probably don't not like you either. They probably nothing you.
Yeah.
They just go, yeah, she's fine.
Yeah.
Or she's okay. They don't really have an opinion. And actually not spending loads of time and energy and investment on thinking, I must get everybody to like me.
Yeah.
Because actually that's just a bit of waste of time.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that helped me as well, and if you're listening and you think this is a confidence gremlin and you're a manager, one of the things that's helped me with my team, where I feel like I need to give them some feedback, I think this is going to be difficult, they might hate me as a result of me saying this, whatever that little mantra that's going round and round your head is, I find that if I write down the statement and I just say what I've written down, and I learnt this almost by accident, because I'd be writing notes on their feedback forms and I'd just be reading it, and they wouldn't hate me. So I'd be able to say this.
It wasn't a disaster.
It wasn't a disaster. I'd be able to say this quite bold thing like, you've got some feedback that you've been very aggressive in that meeting, or I think your disorganisation's holding you back. I've almost just written it as like on a PowerPoint or in a feedback, and I've written it quite bluntly, in a way that if I overthought it, I wouldn't say it that bluntly. I'd kind of waffle around it
and worry they're not going to like you as a result.
Yeah, and actually when it's been written down in front of me, I've just said it, and it's been fine. The other person's gone, okay, maybe they've asked for some evidence or whatever they've asked for, but I have not had a single situation where someone's burst into tears or hated me or never spoken to me again. And it's enabled me to have a much more direct conversation about something that if I hadn't written it down, I might have found more difficult. So I think if you're a manager, or actually maybe just having a difficult conversation with somebody else, if there's a particular message you want to land, I would suggest writing it down and then just saying what's on this piece of paper and sort of moving past whatever emotional connection baggage, exactly that, you've placed on this statement. It can help you just move forward and get beyond it.
I think when I've done something very similar, the other thing to think about is when you've said it, then shut up, stop talking. Yeah. Because it's really easy also to try to kind of say the sentence and then go into 4 million caveats and, I'm just going to keep talking about it and talk around it because it's made me feel quite uncomfortable and it was quite direct. Yeah. It's like saying no to a piece of work, I think. Yeah. When you say, someone said to you, I'd really like you to do this work, and they maybe position it as, this is an incredible development opportunity, one of those kind of classics. This is going to take up loads of your time, but we're not going to prioritise for you or help you do that. If sometimes you need to say, I don't think it's realistic to do this piece of work at the moment because of the workload I've got. Yeah. You say that and then you stop and you let the other person respond. rather than then spending the next 5-10 minutes justifying that first sentence.
Yeah.
And I think that is so hard to do. I think don't underestimate how difficult that is. But if you can, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and actually just taking the time to prioritise your workload so you're able to say that. So because I think the people that say yes a lot because they don't want to say no because they won't be liked might not be doing it with a really clear understanding of what's the impact of that. Maybe it means the quality of their work goes down or they're having to work at nights. But actually just spending 5 minutes thinking, what are my top 3 or 4 priorities? What are the boundaries I'm putting in place? I'm going to go home at 6 o'clock or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then actually, when you say no to somebody, you can give them that reason. I think, again, it can give you a bit more confidence in saying no to something because you've got a good reason behind it. But I think in order to do that, you need to know what your priorities are. So it would probably be another tip, I think. Have a clear view of what's important for you to work on so that you can say no to something in quite an objective, controlled way. That can feel better about saying no, and you don't have to worry quite so much about someone hating you for saying you can't do that piece of work now.
Or having quite a grown-up conversation about also getting somebody else to support you in that prioritisation. So as long as you know what your priorities are at the moment, it doesn't mean that you can't be flexible about those priorities, but you need to agree together if they're going to change. So actually, you can't just keep adding another thing onto the to-do list if this new piece of work actually is a really big priority. Okay, so what are you going to stop as a result? And that is never an unfair question to say, actually, this feels really important. We're both agreeing that, and I think I could add value to it. But realistically, to do a really great job, I can't just add it onto my current workload. Here's what my workload looks like. Help me to prioritise it. Don't always feel like you have to come up with all the answers yourself.
The only other thing that's helped me is, it's a bit deep, it's some psychology stuff around the parent, adult, child dynamic at work. So I think this can play out for a lot of people at work where you can go into child mode and maybe your boss or some senior people in the business can almost be, in your mind, the parent. And as a result, you kind of want to please them, just like a child does with a parent. And I think sometimes that can be where this...
Looking for the gold star.
Looking for the gold star. And that's where this people won't like me thing can really show up as a confidence gremlin. And I think once you're aware that you're acting... Because who wants to do that at work? Who wants to be the child at work and looking up to someone as a parent? That's not the dynamic we want for a happy career. I think once you can be aware that this is maybe happening, that you are looking up to someone more senior than you and you're looking for their approval, you're looking for that gold star, I think that gives you the opportunity to think, is this really the dynamic I want at work? Do I really want this parent-adult-child relationship to be at work? I would think for most people the answer is no. And thinking about how can you level it up a little bit more? How can you be two adults talking to each other? And that means you might need to have a slightly different conversation and you might not need to look for their approval all the time. I had someone in my old team and she really looked for approval from a senior person. And I explained to her that you're never going to get that approval if that's just not his way. He's not going to give you that. And actually, you're much better kind of getting his respect. And the way you're going to get his respect is by presenting things to him, challenging him. And I think that can sometimes, for other people, that might be a useful way of thinking about this at work. Have you got that dynamic, that parent-child dynamic going on because of this need to be liked? And how can you maybe redress it so it feels more like an adult-to-adult relationship and it's more about respect than being liked?
Brilliant. So we've gone through loads of different kind of examples and hints and tips today. If you had to pick, say, 2 things that you would suggest to anyone who sort of goes, oh, this feels like people not liking me might be a bit of a confidence gremlin, where would you suggest people start?
I think I would suggest a really good starting point is to realise that look around you and look at who you admire and respect and just ask yourself, is it the people that are always nice and always say yes to things, or is it somebody else? I think when you look at somebody else, you can realise that actually maybe they do challenge and they're still liked and they're still respected. So I'd say take a step back from how you feel about you and look at people you admire. That can be the first helpful thing. I think the second thing is to look at relationships where this is holding the business or other people back. So again, think about less about yourself and think about, am I not adding as much value as I could in a certain situation because this is how I'm behaving? And I think once you start to do that, it can change your perspective on not only is this maybe holding you back, it's actually holding other people back, and you could start to realise the impact of this confidence gremlin on your career.
Yeah, so actually quite a lot of sort of self-reflection
Yeah.
before you then potentially go into some of the things that we've talked about, like how to actually say no, how to prioritise, so almost just be really clear first about who you admire and actually the value that you add.
Yeah.
And then that just gives you a really good springboard for then doing some of those other things that we've talked about.
Yeah, I think it gives you the motivation. I think you need that motivation to do some of this action off.
Brilliant. And as we often say, don't forget this stuff is hard.
Yeah.
It really is. Overcoming any of your confidence gremlins takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a bit of perseverance along the way. So take small steps. Don't try to do all of this in 1 week because you'll be exhausted and probably self-implode.
And it's taken me a long time.
Yeah.
This has taken years and years of actually experience and testing. So recognise that it's not going to be solved in a week.
Exactly. And as you do start to make progress, try and think of ways to recognise that progress. Whether you write down in your notes in your iPhone the one thing you've done that week where you just feel like you've taken a little mini step forward, whether you're actually sharing that with somebody you work with who you feel kind of confident enough to say, well, actually, I did manage to do this month and I feel that bit more confident now that I don't feel everyone needs to absolutely love me. And make sure you're sort of saying well done to yourself. So it feels like it's starting to be a running joke that I always say I get a posh coffee. But I'm sure there are other things you can do other than get a coffee. What else do you do, Helen? So if you've been working on this for years, what sort of things do you do to sort of say well done to yourself?
I think I just reflect at the end of the day. I feel really proud when I set myself a little target. So I'll think, okay, that's that individual that I'm gonna say this thing to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. And then at the end of the day, I will just kind of acknowledge the fact that I've said it. I don't necessarily need to go and buy myself something, but
Basically, you're saying you're less materialistic than me, which is actually not true. So you're making me look bad.
More that I will take a moment. So I think at the end of my day, I always reflect on what am I proud of, what am I grateful for, what am I going to do tomorrow, like what am I going to achieve. And I think it's in that moment that I will think, actually, I'm really proud that I had that conversation. And so I think it's just acknowledging that you've done something, because I think so often we just move on really, really quickly. And then you give yourself almost the confidence to do a little bit more the next day.
Yeah. So, you can do that and reflect properly, or you can just do what I do and nip out for a coffee. Either way works well. So that's about it for this week. Thank you very much for listening to our Amazing If podcast. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe on iTunes. Next week, we'll be taking you through another confidence gremlin, which is a fear of senior people. So if you're interested in that, tune in. If you want to learn more, you can go onto our website at www.amazingif.com. You can get hold of our book on Amazon, which is How to Overcome Your Confidence Gremlins. And as ever, we'd love to know what topics you'd like us to cover, maybe how you've overcome some of these confidence gremlins for yourself. So please do tweet us with any suggestions you've got, any thoughts you've got. All feedback is very welcome. And we're at amazing_if. So that's it for this week. Until next time, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye.